So I'm Matt Larder, Head of Cloud at Softcat.
And my name is Dean Gardner, Field CTO at Softcat. So Matt, what is a hybrid cloud that's right for you?
It's a good question, Dean, and I think, let's face it, cloud is a really complex place. There's lots of change brought about every day, and with that change comes a plethora of choice that's available for an organisation. So how do we cut through that noise ultimately to work out what's right for each business? And I think that's the key consideration. It's what is right for each business, not for all businesses and all organisations as a whole. And once we start to get into that, we can then figure out, for example, what outcomes and business change each organisation wants to achieve. To do that, we typically look at three different areas. Firstly, modernising traditional data centre processes and technologies. Secondly, accelerating the use of public cloud. And thirdly, helping customers transform their apps and data. Once we've done those things, often all together, sometimes in silo, we can start to help our customers and organisations unlock business change and value such as increasing pace of change, security and sustainability, all while helping them control cost.
So Matt, there are many different types of cloud options now available. So we're talking private, public, cloud and SaaS. What considerations should organisations think about when choosing the right path to the right platform?
I'd recommend three things in this order, and none of them are about the platform. Firstly, understand existing investments that you've got today, because that will quickly help you figure out the feasibility of making a change and when you want to make it. Secondly, identify what you have today and whether those things that you've got are broken or whether you think they could work in a smarter way going forwards, because that will help you figure out what amount of change is required and what amount of value you can realise. Thirdly, develop a plan of what you've got today and where you'd like to get to, and share that plan with a broader set of stakeholders across the organisation to get their buy-in. That will help you figure out things that you don't know. As the age-old saying goes, you don't know what you don't know, and at that point you can start to figure out where you might need to bring in specialist help, either through other resources from across the wider business or through partners to help you fill in those blanks and help you figure out how you can get to that end state. So Dean, many organisations are looking at removing data centre footprints, but do you think there's a case for modernising data centre as part of a wider cloud strategy?
Absolutely. Many organisations are moving towards public cloud as part of a hybrid platform strategy. And there's several reasons for this. Legacy applications that have to remain on premises because they're not suitable for public cloud. We're seeing more of those needing to be transformed, but doing so within a modernised architecture and infrastructure makes sense in a lot of ways. Data sovereignty and data resiliency and how you protect that data from threats is becoming more crucial than ever before. The evolution of the edge that requires localized data center footprint and infrastructure, that's happening more and more to stay close to the user. And innovation is crucial for many organizations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's done in public cloud to scale. And a lot more organizations are looking to modernize that infrastructure in their existing data center or in a new data center to be then able to do that more cost effectively, because the scaling public cloud can get expensive, whereas obviously doing some of that and running workloads locally on modernized infrastructure can be more suitable on occasions. So Matt, we hear the term cloud first strategy a fair amount, more than ever before. But is it right for every organization to look at a cloud first strategy?
I think if you take a few steps back, cloud first for many organisations often then got taken a step further to moving everything to cloud. And for lots of organisations, that's just not applicable. They've got lots of on-premise, in-office, data centre, edge location workloads that for various reasons just can't move to public cloud. So that sort of then brings me back to your question, in that cloud first really should be a guiding principle of understanding when you've got a new requirement, asking the organisation or challenging the organisation of, can this thing be in public cloud? And if not, why not, as an exception only? And you should then guide that process based on principles such as sustainability, security, cost and pace of change. And from those principles, you'll then quickly figure out whether it's right for that workload to be in public cloud, on-premise or SaaS, etc. So Dean, many people refer to apps and data as the lifeblood of an organisation in this era, but what do you think the focus should be for an organisation to fully transform their apps and data?
Well, there's a couple of areas that organizations have to focus on when it comes to transforming apps and the data itself. And there's a couple of tracks they can go down. So transforming the applications is important because you can obviously move your business objectives forward. And to do that, you probably have to categorize your applications into the 6Rs approach as an example. So rehost, replatform, these terms that are typically used, sometimes as 7, sometimes as 6. But that's becoming more important to really understand what applications you have and then what you can then do with those applications moving forward to fully then transform. And there's things like refactoring in there as well. So those decisions have to be made to move your application landscape forward. On the data side, there's a similar activity that needs to be carried out. You need to understand your data footprint, and that's the structured and unstructured data. That's databases and data platforms that sit behind the applications you're looking to transform, and all of that unstructured, unfiltered data, if you will, that users use and consume, the documents and all those kind of things. And so understanding the data footprint to then transform the data to in terms of probably having a data strategy, and then obviously understanding the application footprint to then put those into the categories they need to go into. So it's critical for customers to understand those landscapes to fully move forward and transform.
So Dean, as hybrid cloud landscapes continue to evolve, are there any areas that you think organisations should look at in detail to make sure they can manage the complexity of that growth?
Yeah, there's probably 3 areas that stand out that we see regularly. It's the FinOps piece, managing that finance layer as more consumption models are brought into an organization's hybrid cloud strategy. That's happening more and more, and managing that more effectively is important. Having a security layer that goes across the multi-platforms that potentially are being used and consumed, having a strategy around that is critical to ensure that you've got that security layer sewn up essentially, and you've got accountability and you can own what that looks like. And then the third piece is that observability piece. So having platforms in place that can observe all of the components that are spread across this hybrid and in some cases multi-platform or multi-cloud landscape, and having that monitored, and you can become more proactive as opposed to reactive to that data in an effective way to ensure that you're operating to an effective model. And that means you have to then move forward to building this target operating model and potentially upskilling your existing teams to focus on those areas, because there may not be things that those teams do today. So Matt, how would you suggest a customer engages with Softcat, and what is the approach to support a hybrid cloud strategy with Softcat?
A key thing that a lot of our chief technologists are helping our customers with today is putting together plans like this that we touched on before as well, in terms of where you are today and where you want to get to. And as we touched on earlier, the 3 kind of pillars of those areas in which you need to address that journey is firstly looking at modernising the data centre.
Yeah, and we work with the likes of Veeam, Druva and Rubrik around that data sovereignty piece.
Perfect. And then secondly, looking at the acceleration and the use of cloud-based technology.
And obviously we're partners with AWS, Azure and Google.
Yeah, great. And then lastly is looking at how you transform the apps and data that sit across those different platforms.
And we have strategic partners, Zynomics, DSP and Expert Thinking, who focus on that application and data transformation landscape.
Perfect, thanks Dean. And then lastly then, just to say really that as we go across this process, there is a series of webinars and a self-assessment that you can complete which will help you understand, for example, what your maturity in these different areas might be, what areas of consideration you should be looking at based on the things that Dean and I have talked about today. And lastly, those webinars to help drive awareness and understanding of those different areas of things that you might not be doing today or might not recognise a need for, but ultimately might be, for example, a threat out there that you're not aware of that you should be mitigating that you're not.
So in summary, we're talking about modernising, accelerating and transforming. And so thanks for joining me today, Matt.
Thanks, Dean.
Thanks all.